What were the offerings made during the Feast of Weeks under the law of Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on walking through the Bible.
Glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Numbers 28. We're going to be reading from verses 26 to 31. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers 28, beginning of verse 26. Also on the day of the first fruits, when you bring a new grain offering to the Lord at your Feast of Weeks, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work. You shall present a burnt offering as a sweet aroma to the Lord, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 lambs in their first year with their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for the 1 ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Also 1 kid of the goats to make atonement for you. Be sure that they are without blemish. You shall present them with their drink offerings, besides the regular burnt offering with its grain offering. In this chapter, we have left the narrative of the book of Numbers and been looking at the regular sacrifices that were to be offered to the Lord under the law of Moses. These sacrifices would have been offered on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis for as long as the law of Moses was in force. I hope that the sheer number of animals offered has been impressed upon you, for often when we read of these sacrifices, we don't realize just how much blood was shed, and yet not one sin was remitted. Only the blood of Christ could remit sins, but he didn't need to be offered daily. He only needed to be offered once. That's how pure and unblemished he was. The blood of a sinless man only needed to be shed once, meaning that all would have the opportunity to be forgiven by God if they would but obey him in faith. We've thus far looked at the daily sacrifices, the weekly sacrifices, the monthly sacrifices, and the sacrifices offered during the Feast of Passover. In total, if we were to count from Mount Sinai until the time Christ died, assuming that the sacrifices continued during the period of captivity, that would have meant in what we've covered thus far about 1,430,193 lambs, 56,202 bulls, and 28,101 rams and goats would have been offered. And we're not done yet. Nor does that number include the amount of animals sacrificed by the people themselves. Coming out of verse 26, we come to the Feast of Weeks, commonly known to Christians as the Day of Pentecost. Instructions for this feast are found in Leviticus 23, verses 15 to 21, which says, "And you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. Count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Then you shall offer a new grain offering to the Lord. You shall bring from your dwellings 2 wave loaves of 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour. They shall be baked with leaven. They are the first fruits to the Lord. And you shall offer with the bread 7 lambs of the first year without blemish, 1 young bull, and 2 rams. They shall be as a burnt offering to the Lord with their grain offering and their drink offerings, an offering made by fire for a sweet aroma to the Lord. Then you shall sacrifice 1 kid of the goats as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs of the first year as a sacrifice of the peace offering. The priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before the Lord with the 2 lambs. They shall be holy to the Lord for the priest. And you shall proclaim on the same day that it is a holy convocation to you. You shall do no customary work on it. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations." Unlike the offerings we've read thus far, which were introduced to us in Numbers, the offerings made during the Feast of Weeks was covered in Leviticus and are simply summarized in Numbers. The feast itself gets the name because it was determined by counting weeks. The counting would begin the day after the Sabbath when the sheaf of the wave offering was made, the first fruits, which occurred the day after the Sabbath during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This day would have significance because it was the day that Jesus rose from the dead, meaning that he was our first fruits of them that rise from the dead. From that day, they were to count 7 Sabbaths, add 1 more day, meaning 50 days. And on this day, which would always be what we call Sunday, would be the Feast of Weeks. In the New Testament, again, it is referred to as Pentecost because Pentecost in Greek means 50. What offerings were made during this feast? 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs in their first year, and a goat, which would serve as the sin offering. They all were to be without blemish. They would also include the grain and the drink offerings that were required for each animal. So let's add this to our running total of animals offered as part of the regular sacrifices. From Sinai to Christ, without interruption for the captivity, Israel would now have offered about 1,440,546 lambs, 59,160 bulls, 29,580 rams and goats. Again, not one animal remitted sins, but were necessary to be pleasing to God. We move on to the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement, the Lord willing, in our next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers 29, verses 1 to 11, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.